What makes a person of interest? Coach Michael Burt cuts to the chase, interviewing some of the biggest names in the world. How do they think? What makes them tick? What are their thought processes? And how they became a person of interest.
All right, we're here. Sharon Lechter, Coach Burt. Thursday
Wonderful to be with
afternoon.
you. We made it.
It's so good to see you. I'm excited today. I get the privilege of interviewing a person that I've admired for a long time, and she didn't know I was admiring her, but I was admiring her work, and I'm getting to know her at a more personal level, and she's been a mentor to many people. And for many years here at my office at the Greatness Factory, I had a book, and that book was Outwitting the Devil. And I would read on it, and I keep different books in different locations. And as we've been going through this period, there's been a lot of doubt in people, Sharon, as you know, and there's been a lot of insecurities. And I'm sure every business owner out there in America has had some of that doubt. They've woken up, they went to bed tired, and they woke up hungry, but they may have woken up with some doubt. And as I was rereading this book, you know, I've got some really good questions for you. So I've got Sharon Lechter here, and I'm going to read a little bit about Sharon. Many of you would know her. Co-author of 3 Feet from Gold, co-author of the international bestseller Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 14 books in the Rich Dad series. Lechter is also national spokesperson for the National CPAs on Financial Literacy and the founder of Pay Your Family First. Now, this interest, she is now focused on expanding the knowledge of Napoleon Hill, and many of you know Napoleon Hill is one of the great thinkers of our time, one of the great personal development people of our time, and almost everybody in the world, Sharon, goes back to Think and Grow Rich at some point, right? So I've got Miss Sharon Lechter here with us, and we're going to play some pitch and catch on person of interest. So Sharon, welcome to the podcast, and it's good to see you. And how's everything going with you?
Fantastic. I'm so delighted to be with you. And it's something that you're picking the right topic. I tell you, if there was ever a book written for what we're going through right now, it was Outwitting the Devil. Even though it was written back in 1938, I think it was intended for today.
And you know, a lot of your commentary in here, so if people don't have this book, it'd be a great book to read because it's basically written, and then you come in and bring your commentary, right, to it. And a lot of it, I noticed when I was rereading it, is talking about the economic climate of that period of when you were working on this. So talk a little, when was this? When did you come in and add this to the equation?
Well, it was originally written in 1938, coming out of the Great Depression. And it was written because Napoleon Hill had spent 25 years preparing and writing Think and Grow Rich, and he released it in 1937. And when he released it, he was frustrated. He goes, even though people know what they're supposed to do to be successful, they don't do it. And that was so bad because it's so right. I mean, I'm busted when I think about that. We decide to sit on the sofa instead of get up and do what we need to do. Right. And certainly when we're fearful, that's tenfold because we're paralyzed in fear. Yes. And it's so important for us not to let that happen. And so, but the title scared his wife to death. She worked for the Presbyterian College and she forbid the book to be published, and it hid away for 73 years. Wow. So it's 2008. Remember what happened to the economy back then? That used to be the worst in recent history. Unfortunately, we're worse now, but, and the foundation had the manuscript and they called me. In fact, it was the month we released 3 Feet from Gold in 2009. Don Green called and said, I have this manuscript. I don't know what to do with it. And so he sent it to me. I was probably only the 4th or 5th person to ever read it. And I tell you, it just transformed my life. In fact, I was a little worried by the title. My daughter is a minister and she says, Mom, I need to pray over you. I said, go for it. Yeah. But when I read it, it really changed my life from a standpoint of how I saw other people and how I just rediscovered things in myself about those subconscious reactions. I'm sure maybe someone out there has overreacted sometimes, you know, maybe to a spouse or something, sure, and you don't know where it came from. Right. And so I just knew it had to be released. It had to get out.
What did you find? You know, I basically prepared 10 questions, and some of them, you know, have to do with your thought patterns and your life and your processes and how they intertwine with the book Outwitting the Devil. What did you find fascinating about Napoleon Hill?
The book Outwitting the Devil really goes into, shares the insights of this man who we see as this master guru of personal development. This book really kind of opens his kimono, and he shares when he was fearful, when he held himself back. You know, he talks about how he wasn't the greatest dad, you know, those things. He really shares those things. And so it's like you get to know the man
Yes.
not the legend, the man behind the legend. And you realize that we all have our scars. We all have those things that hold us back, but we can still strive for success. And my comments, the book was written in 38. And so we didn't want to anger any diehard Hill fans. So my comments were in a different typeset and bold, so you could read his work without my interference. But at the same time, our goal was to bring his teachings to the younger generation, many of whom had never heard of Napoleon Hill or Think and Grow Rich.
Right.
And it really has worked. It has worked, Michael. It's amazing and incredible, the uplift in the younger generation that just love this book.
Now, you talk about in the book, one of your notes that you made in there was about how he worked for 20 years with no pay. And this is interesting because I said, if I ever write a book for young people, I'm actually doing a boot camp in a few weeks called Flip the Switch around a new book that I'm writing. And it's primarily for 18 to 35-year-olds who are trying to find their voice in life. And it's kind of my give back, right? And I'm going to spend 3 days with them, just teaching them as much as I can teach them. And I'm so excited about it. But I would write a book called Go for the Mentor Over the Money, and how much you could learn, right, from your mentors. But Napoleon Hill went 20 years really just studying with no formal payment. That's what he talks about in the book, right? And talk a little bit about why that's important, because there's so many young people today that they come out of school, right, and they want to be a person of interest in the first year, and they want to make $1 million in the second year, and they it's a cotton candy thought, but I think I want you to speak to that.
Well, when Andrew Carnegie charged him, he told him, he said, this is going to be a long process for you. I'm not going to pay you, but you're going to have more than payment. You're going to have the wealth of knowledge and opening those Rolodex. I call it the power of association. And he literally had a timer under his desk to see if Napoleon Hill would say yes within 60 seconds. And by God, at 59 seconds, he said yes. And he took on this journey knowing that he wasn't going to get compensated in money, but also knowing he was going to get overcompensated in knowledge and this incredible treasure chest. Because Andrew Carnegie said, I have all these rich friends, or all men at the time, 500. We all have things in common. And I want you to go out and find those common strings. That's why Think and Grow Rich is so powerful, because it's not one man's philosophy. It is the thesis, the term paper, like a doctoral thesis on success. Yeah. And that's why it's so powerful even today.
Wouldn't you say that one of your tenets of success has been your curiosity? I mean, at the end of the day, successful people are incredibly curious. Curiosity leads to passion. Curiosity leads to exposure to new ideas and concepts. I mean, really, he had this curiosity about, I think about Covey, who was my mentor, from 18 to 25, and he went on sabbatical for a month in Hawaii, and he went to the library and pulled out all the literature, right? Over 200 years of success literature, and he codified it into what the most successful people did into those 7 habits. And I think successful people have this curiosity about them. When were you turned on to personal development?
Probably, I read Think and Grow Rich when I was 19. Okay. It was recommended to me by one of my college professors. I didn't realize the impact it had on me until I was probably in my 30s. And I just kind of kept growing forward. It was in the back of my head, but it wasn't until I was probably in my late 20s that I started picking up and reading things and listening to things. And, but I don't want to go past your comment, because it's so true. And it's what I teach. When I talk to parents about their kids, I said, think about these little kids when they're first born, they build forts and pirates and castles out of pillows and blankets. I'm sure your daughter's done that, right? And they have these incredible imaginations. Anything is possible. Then they go to school and they're taught some conformity. Yes. We have to have a little of that to live. Then we get a job, we have a career, we get comfortable, then we get complacent. And then we have a crisis like what we've been having right now, and our life is thrown into chaos. And how do we get out of it? Becoming curious and creative again. Yeah. And so it's exactly, you and I are singing the same song. We have to keep our kids curious and creative. And for me, I always, every time I speak to a group, I go, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Right.
And usually they get this like blank look on their face because they can't remember. the last time they did something for the first time. And it's a trigger. Are you being creative? Are you being curious? Because that's the spice of life. You keep learning. Be a lifelong learner.
Absolutely. And how did you get involved in this project? Because, you know, I wrote a book called Person of Interest. It's kind of the concept behind this podcast. And it's really people. So it's been one of my most popular books. So people are constantly asking me, how do I become a person of interest? What can I do to raise my person of interest score? How do I become a known quantity in the world? Right? How do I become, when people come to Nashville where I live, to become famous, right? As country music stars. And so for you, you know, what was it for you? There's two parts of this question. One, what was it that originally elevated Sharon Lechter's person of interest score to where you became this known figure in the world of thought leadership? And how did you get involved in this project? And was it tied to that, right? I'm sure it was tied to your person of interest score and your relationships.
Sure. I'll give you my Cliff Notes version, Michael, because I've been around a long time. But, you know, I never had on my vision board, I never had in my goals to become a celebrity. My 8th grade English teacher told me I would be a famous author, and I was in math and science. I thought she was crazy. But as I continued on, I built the children's talking book industry, and I thought, wow, people don't know how to build companies like this. This is something people need to know. Again, it was just an entrepreneurial engagement and interest. And then when my own child went off to college and got in credit card debt in 1992, that's when I really took my experience in publishing, my experience as a CPA, understanding numbers and accounting. I was able to then combine that with my passion that kids need to be taught about money. I was so angry that he got into that trouble. And I was more angry with myself than him. And I realized the things that I grew up in a very entrepreneurial house. So things that were just in nature for me, understanding, buying, building, creating income producing assets. That's how you become independently wealthy and basically financially free. Nobody else seems to know that. And so that's been my mission, to train people. And I just got off another interview, so I'm going to use a prop.
Yep.
The Cash Flow Quadrant, my second book that I wrote in the Rich Dad series. Nobody understands that they need to move. Well, not many people know that they need to move to the right side. They're on this side, employee, self-employed, and they're exchanging time for money. I go, no, invest your time to buy, build, and create assets as businesses or investments. That's where financial freedom is. Wow. On the left side, as an employee or self-employed, your amount of money you can make is finite because there's only 7 days in the week and 24 hours in the day.
Right.
But if you get businesses, investments, those are assets. My favorite word on earth, assets. And I say assets are sexy because that's where wealth is. They become economic engines and they work for you. And then the amount of money you can make is infinite, which means the amount of money that you can give away is also infinite.
Well, I call that, sometimes I got a buddy that calls it the other side. Why does it seem so hard to get to the other side, meaning to the wealth side, right? And that was one of my favorite books, the Cash Flow Quadrant, because I have to admit, when I was 31 years old, I didn't know the difference between an asset and a liability. I was raised by a single mother, and she worked hard and made sure I never wanted for anything, but we didn't talk about money. And so I went on to be a high school basketball coach. I was on a fixed income. I didn't understand assets and liability. And I literally went down and purchased How to Grow Your Financial IQ, was the first book I purchased at Barnes and Nobles. I said, man, I have got to understand. Then I bought Cash Flow Quadrant. Then I went through a series, right? And I started going, okay, assets add, liabilities subtract. This is simple. And the way you put it together was so simple because I had no background in that whatsoever. And now I buy millions of dollars of income producing properties, you know? And so that's why I think so many people go back to those books and they say, you know, that really was instrumental, because you'll hear so many people say, I read this book and it changed my whole life. And you broke it down because not many people know. So let's tie this down, because one of my notes was the book talks a lot about adversity and how the devil creates doubt. A lot of people have this, that I see, that I coach, have this mental block that says, well, getting wealthy is only for a certain group of people. It's only the wealthy and the strong. And Sharon Lechter can do it. Maybe Coach Burt can do it, but I can't do it. And that's doubt. They just live their lives in a scarcity mindset of doubt. And the book kind of addresses this doubt and how the devil creates this doubt. Speak to that. And how would a person overcome that?
Well, absolutely. Before I do that, though, I want to talk about the mindset. That's exactly what you're talking about. The people you're talking about have a scarcity mindset. And I want to release that for them. Think about what your parents said about money as you grew up. You grew up and they said, we can't afford it. Pinch your pennies, save for a rainy day. Money doesn't grow on trees. So you grow up in this environment where you hear money negative, money negative, money negative. And no wonder you become fearful of never having enough money. And then when you get money, you're afraid you're going to lose it. That's where that scarcity mindset comes from. And once you can realize it, I tell people when they're getting married, go out on a financial date and talk about what your parents thought about money. You'll start laughing, but then you're going to start realizing why you may have differences. And so when you can release that scarcity mindset, you can say, okay, now I have the opportunity, because this is a world of abundance we live in. And that self-doubt, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm an expert. Easy for Coach Burt to say, easy for Sharon Lechter to say. I started with nothing. I worked very hard to create it. You know, when you talk about the person of interest, it took, you know, when I left Rich Dad, I thought, gosh, I was leaving my legacy behind. I thought Rich Dad was my legacy, but no, somebody upstairs had more for me to do. And that's when I got the call from President Bush. It was not on my vision board either. I served Bush and Obama as a presidential advisor because I stayed true to who I was and what my mission was in teaching financial education, that I became a person of interest. I thought it was going to be Rich Dad that got me there, but no, it was presidential advisors and now the Napoleon Hill Foundation. You need to open yourself up to the possibilities and the opportunities. And the reason this book is so powerful is in it, this interrogation of the devil. You know, he says you can believe it's the real devil or man-made devil. It's up to you if you derive any benefit. He talks about the fears that he uses: fear of poverty, fear of death, fear of ill health, fear of criticism. Until January, since we've released that, I talk about the strongest fear around us is the fear of criticism, because people want to keep up with the Joneses. Not since January, because if you go to page 61 in the interrogation, the devil says the strongest fears I use, and there will come a time when I will take people to their knees: fear of death and fear of poverty. And what have we been living in the last few months? Fear of death from the virus, fear of poverty, and the fear of isolation. The trifecta of fears. And he talks about fear either paralyzes you or motivates you. And most of us are paralyzed. So he wants to give you he gives you the floor plan on how to get past those doubts, looking where they came from. And he takes on every taboo there is: sex, politics, religion, what you eat. I mean, everything. Cigarettes. Before anybody knew cigarettes were bad for you, he's saying that's how he hooks kids. And it's an amazing document. For instance, he talks about religion. He says, were you taught your religion through fear or through faith? And boy, did that hit home to me. I practically lived in my church. I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and the minister from the pulpit, fire and brimstone, scared the you-know-what out of me. I knew I was going to go to hell. But the youth minister taught me joy, love, God, total faith. And so it really impacted me when I read this book, because I could see both. And so many people, when they read that, they go, I grew up as a Catholic, nothing but guilt in my life, right? Somebody else, it's just amazing. So the book helps open up your world and identifying where those doubts and those beliefs may have come from. Maybe you had a parent that told you could be anything you want to be, or you had a parent that says you'll never make it. You might as well give up, right? And those things get implanted in our subconscious. So he talks about having that definiteness of purpose, paying attention to who you're spending your time with, how you're spending your time, and what the environment is. Having the right people around you, and capital letters, having a mentor. Somebody, I heard a phrase a few weeks ago, smart people learn from their mistakes. Yes, they do. Brilliant geniuses learn from other people's mistakes. And that's the beauty of working with Coach Michael Burt.
Yep. And I think one of the beauties of working with the coach like you, like me, is that, we get to experience and see what the best people in the world do. When you're coaching great people, you're learning from them. They're learning from you, but you're learning from them. You're observing, you're watching. Let's talk about the insecurity. In the book, it talks about happiness and alignment. And many people out there that I see reach a certain point in life and maybe call them golden handcuffs, or they're scared to leave. I'm coaching people right now that are earning over $1 million a year personally, but that's not what they're supposed to be doing. They're not in alignment with their voice and calling in life. And you had a moment where, in the book you talk about making money, but maybe out of alignment. You could stay or you could go. And I'm sure, just like when I retired from athletic coaching, I was scared to death. Like, what am I going to do? This is what I've done my whole life. Like, right. But so many people will stay there. What would you say to those people? Because that was a big decision for you.
Well, when one door closes, other doors open, but sometimes you have to close the door for those other doors to open. And when I made the decision to leave Rich Dad, it was the height of our success. I'd led the company. I was partners with Robert Kiyosaki for 10 years. And he wanted to do something with the company that did not align with my personal beliefs. He wanted to go into franchising. It was a great model for us, not a good model for the franchisees. So I made the decision to leave. I'd written 15 books. It's like leaving 15 children behind.
Sure.
I left not knowing what was, in front of me. And you just have to stand in your own truth and in your honor. And it was ugly for a little while, but I knew that I never regretted it, because I knew I had to be true to me. I had, for once I could start sleeping through the night and not be tossing and turning about what I was going to have to deal with the next day. And so you have to do what's right for you. And I was no longer on mission. And as soon as I left that organization, I was able to be back on mission. And believe me, when I got the call from the president, I was having a good old fashioned pity party. I was like, what have I done? And I get the phone call and I go, okay, thank you. I got it.
Yeah.
There's nothing for me to do. And there's every one of you, we all had things that stopped us in our tracks. Could have been a death, a divorce, a financial setback, illness, but you're still here for a reason.
Right.
And, and people look at me and say, easy to say, for her to say, well, 7.5 years ago, I lost my youngest son. We're not ever supposed to outlive our children. And it threw me into a zone of neutral numbness for several years. And I almost retired. And this book helped me get through this because it made me understand that there's more for me to do. And my joy didn't come from being neutral.
Right. That's
and
right.
You're talking about happiness. Your happiness comes from making a contribution.
Right.
Growing up, my father would ask me every night, Sharon, have you added value to someone's life today? And that's what this book is talking about, is finding your purpose. And when you have a definiteness of purpose, you get through everything. You get over the obstacle, through it, or you blast it away, because you have that definiteness of purpose. You have the right people around you. So important to have the right people to supporting you on your team, having people on your team who are strong where you're weak. And it's something that I know you and I are both so passionate about helping people discover their highest potential and reaching it.
Now, when you think about, I have a concept called baby star to big star, right? And it's where I see all these baby stars in the world, and people that are, I remember writing down on my, not a vision board, but on a whiteboard I had at one of my houses. People always ask me, what do you want to do now that you won a championship? What do you want to do? And I always wrote down, become the next Covey, the modern day Covey. And Tim Story said that to me one day. He didn't know that I wrote that down on a board. But when we first started doing things with each other, he said, Coach, you're really the modern day Covey. And man, it was one of the coolest things.
How did you feel when he said that to you?
It was just, I was like, well, I was like, that's amazing. Like, you don't know that I wrote that down when, that I wrote down that I wanted to, be that kind of guy who impacted that many people. So when you're coaching baby stars that you see out there that have a lot of potential, do you think this is something, because I think this is a big debate. How do you go from a baby star to a big star in the world? Is it organic? Is it long obedience in the same direction? Is it just 10,000 hours of practice? Is it manufactured? I mean, you've been in this game. I mean, for all the people out there who want to be big in the world and help lots of people, what would you tell them? How does it happen?
Well, if it's manufactured, then it's not going to last. It will be my first step.
Good.
You know, it's what the depth of your passion and what you want to do and your focus. And if you're putting the things together, but understanding that you have to build the foundation about what you're doing. It's not just you, it's your mission and the people around you. And, you know, it's like a house. You can't build a house without going down first and building that foundation. So I teach people about the essential components of a successful business. You know, what you're doing, what you're selling, whether it's a product or a service, is what everybody's passionate about. But if you want a successful, sustainable, scalable business, you got to have the foundation around it. And that's what too many people say, well, I'm an overnight success. Well, you know, yeah, I'm an overnight 20-year success, but it's, you know, because I put the things in place to make sure that it was sustainable and scalable. That's what becomes an income producing asset. Otherwise, they just own a job. And so the small stars need to understand how to build you talk about how I explain things simply.
Yep.
A three-legged stool. They can
Yep.
have the best product, the best service, right? Then they can be really good at selling it. They can be really good at delivering it. But that's only two legs of a three-legged stool. So what happens? Nothing long-term. That third leg is the platform, the business that supports you in being able to spread that message in a much wider way. That's where when I launched the Play Big movement, is being number one in your field, the big star, getting there, showing people how to get there, living your legacy, because that's every heart you touch every single day, and creating maximum impact. The only way to become a truly big star with lasting major impact is by doing it methodically, creating the systems and having the right powers of association. Today, collaboration is key. You and I could be viewed as competitors. I don't see you that way. I see as great collaborators. And the fact that we both want to pour into the people that we work with.
Yes. So go back on that big star concept, because even go back to, I mean, the Rich Dad series, those books that you wrote became a movement. And why do you think that was? Like when you go back and people try to replicate that and say, well, what model did they use? How did it become a phenomenon? How did it, I mean, it really became a phenomenon there for all those years. It still is to this day. What do you attribute that to? Was it controversial? Was it because it was a formula? Was it because I even had a podcast called Good Coach, Bad Coach there for a period, and it was based on, I said, man, there's good coach, and the subtitle was the secrets that the good coaches know that the bad coaches don't. And it was based on Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? But so what do you attribute that kind of success to?
Well, I'll give you a few bullet points. How's that? Because, you know, it was everything worked well, right message at the right time. The business that I started and grew globally before that was the talking book business for children. All right. It was back in the late 80s, and kids didn't like to read. And there were no electronics. Kids didn't have electronics back there. And so we had this thing of how are we going to get parents to trust us? And so we needed to align with somebody they trusted. So we did deals with Disney, Warner Brothers, Sesame Street, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Marvel Comics. And we were able to explode that company and very successfully went from 1 to 9 to 23 to 52 million in sales. And we did that because we had those systems put together so that we could build our brand through the association of bigger brands. And when we sold that company, of course, we wrote really big royalty checks to Disney, Warner Brothers. And I said, next time I build a company, I want to get the royalty checks, not write them. And so when we sat down to structure Rich Dad, we said, all right, let's do this so that we build the integrity, the success, the brand, so that other people want to align with us. And because it all started with the game cash flow. Right. And when he went to my husband to help getting a patent, and that's how I met Robert at the first beta test. And it was so in alignment with what I was teaching that I volunteered to help get it done and get it commercialized because of my experience with the talking book industry. And we became partners, but he said he wanted to charge $200 for the game. And most people don't know that, you know, I said, well, we should probably write a brochure that explains the philosophy, and that way parents might be more convinced to spend $200,
Right.
right? And that brochure was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in doing Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the publishers all said it needs to be red, green, or black.
Mhm.
That's a finance book. He said, no, that's why we want it to be purple. We want to stand out.
Mhm.
We want people to see it. Now, a few years later, you go into business section of a bookstore, lots of purple because of us.
Yeah.
We also kept that brand integrity worldwide.
Yeah.
In China, they called us the Purple Storm.
Mm.
So we continued faithfully 24/7 promoting the message. It was the right message at the right time. We had a few companies, little companies like Amway, which was never in our marketing plan, who exploded us worldwide because they believed that it supported their industry, which it does. And that helped us. And then 3 years after we released Rich Dad Poor Dad, we got, in less than 3 years, we ended up on the New York Times bestseller, Wall Street Journal, Business Week, all of them, USA Today on our own. Then the major book publishers started calling us. And then we got the call from Oprah.
Yeah.
So it was understanding how to build a company, not just write a book.
Yeah.
You know, build the company
Right.
that could scale.
That's right.
And have that power of association. So when we knew we were going to be on Oprah, Warner Books came to us. They were able to print and distribute and get into stores in like 30 days, 350,000 copies of the book. Pretty cool, right? So you have to understand the mechanics and the systems of building a business. When we wanted to go into infomercials, I said, if we're going to do that, let's do it with the best, Time Life. They came in with their other people's money, time, and resources to put behind the machine. And so truly, if you want to build a global brand, speed to market is everything these days. You need to make sure you understand the most successful players in each area that can support you and put that speed behind you. Always maintaining your own integrity and your brand.
So today, when you coach people, you have this really unique skill set, really unique experiences of taking a brand global. Do you take a piece of their company? Do you do things like that? Because I always thought for those baby stars that are out there, they go to Sharon Lechter and Sharon says, here's the formula, boom, 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 right? And here's what you do. And you take a company, even a company like mine, that's a $4 million company that I've willed to 4 million. and you go, Coach Burt, we could take it from 4 million to 25 million to 100 million. Like, boom, this is what we do. It's almost like when I couldn't win a championship, Sharon. I sat down with 6 championship coaches and I said, please tell me what I'm not doing. I'm humble, I'm coachable. And they're like, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. I mean, it took them literally 5 minutes to tell me what to do. When I spent time with Paul Martinelli, he said, this is how we took John Maxwell's certified coaches from here to 30,000, 150 million. And he told me in the less than 10 minutes. And I'm like, why didn't I talk to you 10 years ago? Like, this is crazy. So how do you do that now?
Well, when we have clients, first thing, a lot of times we turn clients away because they're not ready for us. And we don't want to take their money if we can't get them to the next level, but we give them the process. So I have an online course that kind of, if they go through that, they can get themselves ready for more higher level mentoring. But we go through a process to determine where you've been, what you've done. Do you have all of your agreements? Have you, is your household tidy? Because most of the time people have been loosey-goosey and they don't really own what they think they own. And they've given some money, they've given some ownership away along the line. So we want to get you tight, really tight, so that the tighter you are, the quicker you can grow, and the faster you can grow. And you end up with more anger with people that are successful than not, so you want to get those agreements tight, and that happens so many times. And then you have the opportunity, and what our superpower, my husband and mine, is we can identify things right away that people could do to add additional revenue, or ways that they can tighten up their intellectual property and be able to have 3 strands of revenue instead of 1. And so there's, people sometimes live in a binders, those blinders are keeping them from seeing things that are right there ready to support them. And other organizations that you can align with that can really take you times 10, times 100, because your message is so aligned with them and they don't have the thing that they can offer. And that's where, when we wanted to go into coaching at Rich Dad, I do not want to manage a coaching floor, right? A call center. So I found the top one in the country, and I went there, and we had dedicated staff using their systems, their money, their floor. I could call in and listen to every call for quality control. We trained them. They answered the phone, Rich Dad Coaching, but I didn't have to do all the training. These were all people who had been successful in their own businesses. And so we were able to hit the ground running, and we were able to maintain that quality control. And so a lot, understanding, 25% of $100 million is a whole lot more attractive to me than 100% of $1 million, right? So understanding those dynamics and being able to see how all those pieces fit together is kind of one of the things that I love to do. It gets my juices flowing.
Sure. So that's an activator of your prey drive, so to speak. The challenge, taking your knowledge set, bringing it to something and seeing something grow. All right, let's finish on this one. Financial literacy. I have an online academy called The Greatness Factor for Kids. And the interesting thing about that is, I spent 10 years as a women's basketball coach teaching kids success principles. That's what made us so successful, using Covey's whole person theory to inner engineer, build a competitive intelligence, right? And I built, Sharon, these little stone cold killing machines. I mean, you should have seen these kids. I mean, they were up straight, make eye contact. You understand what I'm saying? Because we had leadership academies and success academies and life after basketball academies. And I thought, after 10 years, people constantly asking me, what will you do for kids? And I did nothing for 10 years. And I came back and built this online academy. And here's the interesting thing I found. Everybody says they want to be better parents, but they don't want to work at being better parents, right? They say like, even my daughter's school is a private school, and they bought my online academy. Every child there goes through it in the 6th grade, because it's emotional toughness, bounce back, confidence, success readiness, right? And what I found, I went out on the speaking circuit and spoke at all these big school conferences thinking, okay, we're going to sell this puppy to everybody.
We're going to impact millions. You're ready. You got it, right?
Only to find out that it was incredibly hard to change, number one, incredibly hard to sell, even to parents. So what's your thoughts on this financial literacy problem, and how do we solve, let's put it into a bigger category, not just financial literacy, but success readiness for young people, okay? And if it's financial literacy would come under that, emotional intelligence would come under that, right? Work ethic would come under that. All the grit would come under that. How do you think we solve this problem?
Well, you're hitting my hot spot. My hair is white because I've been trying to change the school systems for the last 20 years. It is absolutely a tragedy. We teach our kids about condoms in school. We don't teach them about money. And if we truly, particularly with everything that's going on in the world right now, if we really want to level a playing field so that every child has an opportunity to succeed, shame on us for not teaching them about money. It's been my mission for many, many years. I got the law changed here in Arizona. It's a state-by-state initiative. Only 7 states require a separate personal finance class for graduation. A total of 17, including those states, have a requirement for some, but the rest of them are embedded in other classes, which means they're not getting taught. And it's just criminal. The kids, I do an initiative, I have a game, I will have to send you one, called Thrive Time for Teens, which teaches those 10 to 18-year-olds with humor and with real life experiences, how they spend their time and their money. Each decision they make takes them towards success or not. Mm-hmm. And it gives them that accountability and that resourcefulness. But you're right, parents say, oh yeah. I want to do it. But if they have to put any work into it, 9 times out of 10, they don't. They don't spend the money. It just drives me nuts. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I remember it started even when my kids were little, which now my kids are in their 40s. But when Sesame Street became very popular, parents loved it because it was plug and play. Stick your kids in front of the TV and you could walk away. And it's something that it breaks my heart. But if you want your kids to succeed, if you care about them, you're going to make sure they understand money. Because today, with instant gratification, we've got these kids, they don't understand how to set a goal and achieve it.
Yeah.
They don't have self-confidence where they need it to be. And we need to teach them, set a goal, let's work towards it, let's achieve it, let's celebrate. And you talk about your course. And as part of this game, I have an acronym called BFAB, be fabulous, right? Back straight, eye contact, firm hand check, ask questions, and be bold, right? The BFAB. So we are, again, singing this, we're rhyming here, Coach Burt. So
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. Sharon Lechter, you're always a pleasure. And like I said, you were very instrumental in helping me understand assets and liabilities. And thank you for that, because that's changed my life. It's changed my financial future. It'll change my kids. Now we got a 1-week-old and a 7-year-old. It'll change their financial future. So the work you have done in your lifetime has helped millions of people. And you and I are going to be doing an event later this year with our good friend Tim Story. And
can't wait.
The comeback campaign, and when life knocks the shout out of you. So you can go to coachburt.com right now. We've got 2 dates on the schedule. You can spend a full day with Sharon, Tim Story, and I, and some other special friends. And it's going to be an incredible day. I think it's a power-packed day of just coaching and wisdom and just all kinds of things. So I want to thank you for being you. And I'm so glad we met that day at Tim's church in California. That was such a pleasure.
It was divine. It was definitely a surprise for both of us, but I think it was supposed to happen. That's wonderful.
Guys, Person of Interest, where we interview people of interest in the world doing fascinating things. They're fascinating people and they live fascinating lives, but the biggest thing they do is they create things that impact the world. And so, Sharon, thank you so much today, and we will be seeing you soon.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Hey, I'm Coach Michael Burt, the Super Coach. Just text Coach Burt to this number or that number to get weekly updates, where I'm going to be coaching, and strategies for you to play at a much higher frequency.